Oh my god, a 3D F-Zero is finally on Switch. Nintendo heard our pleas, right? Okay, so maybe it isn't quite a new 3D F-Zero, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't still be excited for F-Zero X, which is the latest Nintendo 64 game to hit the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack service. Because even though F-Zero GX for the GameCube is the one that gets all the attention, F-Zero X is the foundational pillar it was built on. It may not be as pretty or anywhere close, but it otherwise plays very similarly. And it even has a few exclusive features not found anywhere else in the series, like a random track generator and even a death race. Yeah, Nintendo was way ahead when it comes to the Battle Royale genre. But does the game still hold up nearly 25 years later, especially in light of its more popular sequel? Well, let's find out in GameXplain's retro review of F-Zero X. Okay, so in case you were born sometime in the 20 years since the last F-Zero game, F-Zero X is part high-speed racing and part white-knuckle thrill ride featuring tracks that are more like insane roller coasters, with loop-de-loops, half-pipes, full pipes, massive leaps, tunnels, and plenty more. Every race is a heart-pounding fight to the finish against 29 other opponents. And we mean fight literally, both in how you can directly attack other racers by slamming or spinning into them, but also in how every race is a fight to stay alive yourself. Because if you run out of energy, whether by running into things or using boost power, well, it's game over. The thing is, you need to boost in order to win, making it a constant battle of deciding when to spend energy to go fast, and when to slow down to conserve it. Because if you're left running on fumes, it only takes a tiny tap to take you out.
Too bad. You lost to the team.
And it's this exact ever-present risk management that makes F-Zero X's gameplay so brilliant, as the desire to constantly boost isn't just incredibly tempting, but it can also be incredibly damning. You'll find yourself constantly asking whether it's worth taking the risk of using what little energy you have left to try and pull ahead, or if it's better to hold off and hang on to it and settle for a lower position, alive. F-Zero X is all about constant snap decisions like this, whether it's boosting, attacking, or just playing it safe. You'll need to find the balance that works for you to get you to the finish line. Which is a feat that's easier said than done, as there's only one of you and 29 of them. And having so many competitors not only makes every race feel cutthroat, but it's also just so darn cool looking. I just love seeing all these vehicles flying around the track, or sometimes off of it. It adds a real sense of kinetic energy well beyond most racing games, especially when you see destroyed craft ping-ponging all over the place. It also ensures you're always a part of the action, as you're almost always in the middle of it. And it helps that the game's starting positions are the inverse of the finish positions for the previous race. So if you finish last, you'll start first and vice versa. Meaning you'll have to fight your way back to the front of the pack anytime you finish first or anywhere close to it. It's the exact opposite of how Mario Kart works, and I love it here, as it's better balanced for all skill sets, making it harder to maintain a lead through sheer momentum while also being more engaging. Although being in first place may be the goal, it can also be boring when that happens. So having to battle your way to the front of the pack every time is never anything less than thrilling. Adding to that feeling is the rival system, where the game helpfully points out your biggest competitor, either being whoever has the most points, or second most if you're in the lead. Which again is brilliant, as it provides a constant reminder of who you need to beat, or target. Because if you can take them out by slamming them into a wall or off the track, then they'll be out of the race for good, netting them all of 0 points. Heck yes. You can change the entire course of a Grand Prix in an instant without ever winning first, and that's kind of amazing. And can be especially important with the Grand Prix all having 6 races each. Although, like boosting, attacking a rival is also a risk, as there's a good chance you may do more damage to yourself while attempting to do so, whether it's running into a barrier or flinging yourself off a track. Especially because the controls for attacking are a little cumbersome, requiring a double tap of either Z or R for slide attacks, or double tapping one of those while holding the other for a spin attack. Which, yeah, it all feels a little finicky and imprecise, as double tapping takes just a little too long in a game where every second counts. And that's even if you can pull it off, as the window for inputting the double tap is pretty small. I actually used to think that these controls are better than the ones found in F-Zero GX, as it required fewer buttons in general. But after revisiting both games, I have to say that GX's controls are clearly quicker and more reliable. Attacking aside though, the controls are otherwise quick and responsive. And part of the reason for that, and also why F-Zero X holds up so well to this day, is because it accomplishes something that even plenty of games struggle with today, being 60 frames per second gameplay, baby! And it looks and feels lovely as a result, particularly on the Nintendo 64 and Wii U, where the frame rates were rock solid. Unfortunately, the Nintendo Switch version suffers from some serious frame pacing issues, resulting in a frequently jittery look, which I found especially jarring after playing the others, as it ruins the perfect fluidity that the game is known for. Now look, the game is still perfectly playable, to the point that I'm sure most people won't even notice, but it's still disappointing to see a game that used to run flawlessly suffer from fluidity problems on superior hardware. At any rate, that 60 frames per second target comes at a price, being nearly every other element of the graphical presentation. The vehicles are all incredibly low poly, the draw distance isn't great, and every track is bereft of any real detail. The terrain is always a flat, featureless texture, and the only landmarks to be found are flat, distant structures and maybe the occasional office building. Even by Nintendo 64 standards, things look bizarrely bare, and this is one area where F-Zero GX blows X out of the water. Even though it was released just a console generation later, the tracks there wind around and through all kinds of interesting locations, unlike the empty void found in F-Zero X. But to X's credit, the bare-bones design does ensure that there are zero distractions, as every single twist and turn is highly visible, unlike some of their GX counterparts. And it's even clearer now on Nintendo Switch than ever before thanks to the upgrade to 720p, which looks incredibly sharp, and even allows a few smaller details to shine, like the reflective lighting on the vehicles themselves or the engine's exhaust. Although the sharper look does make the low-res character portraits stand out a bit by comparison. But as I said, the overall lack of visual fidelity is a worthwhile sacrifice for the 60 frames per second gameplay and overall responsiveness. It's just a shame it's not perfectly smooth 60 frames per second on Nintendo Switch. In any case, there's a lot to keep you busy here. With 30 unlockable vehicles, each with unique stats, and 24 tracks spread across 4 Grand Prix, you're gonna be here for a while. Especially when you factor in the unlockable master difficulty, which will really push your skills to the limit. And in case the main 24 tracks aren't enough for you, there's even a secret unlockable 5th cup called the X Cup, which randomly creates an entire new track for every race. Unfortunately, the vast majority of them suck, but you might come across a rare gem every now and then, though sadly there's no way to save the good ones. In addition, you'll find a death race option that only F-Zero X has, where you race endlessly around a loop until you take out all 29 opponents. It's fun, but it may not hold your attention for long, especially because your competitors aren't particularly aggressive, making it more of an elaborate time trial to destroy them all rather than a true competition. Though I really think it's a cool idea and it really hope Nintendo revisits it at some point in the future. Come on, who wouldn't love an online death race? Oh, and there's split-screen multiplayer too for up to 4 players, which you can now play online for the first time in series history thanks to the Switch emulator's built-in support for it. Of course, since the game was never designed to be online in the first place, your experience may vary wildly depending on the people you play with and where exactly they're based, as a single poor connection will tank it for everyone. It can still be fun even in those conditions, though the garbled audio may drive you nuts soon enough. Unfortunately, regardless of how many players you play with, the races are always capped at 4 racers total, which makes them feel a little low energy and lonely compared to the single player experience. So while multiplayer can be enjoyable, it's certainly not the main reason to play this game. Even if I do love the random inclusion of a slot wheel that you can spin whenever you die to screw with your very much still alive opponents. Now, although F-Zero X is pretty packed with content, I can't help but feel that Nintendo missed an opportunity to make it even better on Nintendo Switch, because there's an expansion for the game that was released exclusively in Japan for the Nintendo 64 DD add-on, which added new tracks, more music, and even the ability to create your own cars and racetracks. This could have been an amazing chance to finally let people outside of Japan play it for the first time, and it would add even more value to the expansion pack service. I mean, it even had expansion in its name. Ah, Nintendo, maybe someday. So I've had a blast revisiting F-Zero X over the past few days, but I will say there's one aspect of the game's handling that chipped away my enjoyment over time, and that's just how easy it is to lose traction and therefore control at high speeds. It can happen when turning, boosting, or even from just getting tapped, and every time it does, you'll slow to a crawl until you re-establish control. And I started to find it increasingly bothersome as it happens frequently and seemingly inconsistently. It almost seems borderline random. I'm sure it isn't, but sure feels that way. Now hold off on your get good comments, everyone. I'm no F-Zero noob. I'm like one of 5 people that actually finished GX's story mode back in the day. So unless I've completely lost my touch, which maybe I have, it has been 20 years, I just don't have a great grasp on the exact conditions for when it will happen or how to prevent it in the first place. I actually revisited F-Zero GX for comparison and was surprised to discover how much better the physics felt there, where even when you do lose traction, you don't lose nearly as much speed, and therefore control. But just to be clear, F-Zero X is still perfectly playable, and maybe I just do need to get better at it again. But I did find it hampering my enjoyment more these days than I did back in 1998. And that's why I ended up liking F-Zero X a lot in my recent revisit. It's still a wonderful, heart-pounding thrill ride with a ton to do, but at the same time, it gave me a newfound appreciation for how much GX refined those ideas, resulting in a better feeling and much cooler looking experience. F-Zero X is still a great game though, and is absolutely worth checking out, especially since it might be the last F-Zero game we ever see on Nintendo Switch. God, please, I hope that's not the case. It's just a shame that the Nintendo Switch version might be the worst way to play it, due to the uneven frame rate that dampens what should be a perfectly fluid experience. So here's hoping Nintendo addresses this in the future update. But it's still a lot of fun no matter how you choose to enjoy it. And there you have it everyone, our retro review of F-Zero X. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to click that subscribe button and ring that bell for tons more on F-Zero in the future, God we hope, and everything else Nintendo Switch as well. With that, we'll catch you later. Bye everyone!